So I was born in Duke Street Hospital. It was a kind of, I don't quite sure what kind of hospital it was, but it did have a maternity wing to it. And I was born there. My parents lived in a place called Comley Park Place, and in an area called Camlachie in Glasgow. So that's the East End. And I've actually kind of revisited my birthplace, and it turns out it's Lidl's car park. So that was interesting. So I was born there, and the house or the flat, the tenement flat my parents lived in was very much a typical kind of slum tenement. So all that area around Camlachie was more or less slum tenements that were about to be demolished. The tenement flat, the slum tenement flat we lived in, I think it was a one bedroom one, so it had a kind of bed recess, and I think I slept in that. I can't remember now, but it was a kind of, there's a name for the, it wasn't quite a single end, but it had two rooms essentially, and the room with the bed recess also had the kitchen and the sink and all that kind of stuff. And I think the front room was a living room or something like that. I can't remember what the bathroom was like, but I know in that landing and that close, it was originally outside toilets. So and I can remember getting a big key to use the toilet and sort of putting it in, and opening the door, and this kind of cold, dark, damp room. And I remember the chain from the ceiling that you'd pull with a kind of wooden handle, and there'd be newspaper there all cut up, which is kind of interesting because it's quite an old experience. I've heard other people talk about that, but I remember it as well. But yeah, and in the winter time it was terrible. It was really cold and horrible.
We moved into Easterhouse in the early 60s, so I was round about maybe 5-7 years old, and where we stayed in Duke Street, it was like a one bedroom, so I'm one of 7 siblings, so it was hard times then. And when we moved into Easterhouse, we felt as if we won the lottery, because we had a bedroom and a bathroom in the house, because we had to go outside. It was an outside bathroom, and the old tin bath and all that in the days, so when we moved into Easterhouse, we felt as if it was luxury. Yeah, they were just built, so they were, and when we moved in, it was like just all fields. There weren't much of tenement buildings at that point, so it was the start of Easterhouse starting to get built. So it was, and we had a lot of football pitches, and we didn't have a lot for children to play, so we would make up our own games if we're out with our friends, like maybe kick the can, it was called. We used to play red lights, and of course trapdoors run away, got to play that,
So all that area around Camlachie was more or less slum tenements that were about to be demolished. So the whole idea was all these people would be moved to the big housing estates, and in our particular case it was Easterhouse. So I think it was 1964, I think, we moved there. I was born in 1960, so we moved to Easterhouse around about 64, I think.
Do you remember the address?
The first place was called it was Duntarvie Road in Easterhouse, and it was number 47, and it was a 3-storey kind of building, and we were on the top floor.
Do you remember what the actual flat was like inside?
Yeah, it was a 2-bedroom flat. So it was on the right hand side. As you enter the close, you got the stairs, and it was on the right hand side. And immediately going in to the right was a bathroom, and then walking down the hall to the left was the bedroom that my sister and I sort of slept in and played in. Then there's my parents' bedroom, living room straight at the end, and the kitchen was sort of between the living room and the bathroom. And that was a typical kind of format for those kind of buildings. There were front gardens for the ground floor flats. In the back was a back court, which was kind of fenced off between the various blocks, but it was mostly sort of grassed over, so it was open. There wasn't really some people had fenced off areas, so it became their garden. But I think essentially it was common land that people decided to cordon off for their own purposes. But when we went to Easterhouse, as I say, it's kind of grassy areas, but there were big, enormous bins that we could play on as well. They had kind of where the bins are emptied into the bin vans. There was these kind of handles, and you'd climb up and stand on them and peer into the bin, because rummaging through the bin was part of the play in those days. And there was also, I remember, washing poles. So there was these kind of metal washing poles down the back court, and they had a kind of bracketed and a kind of pole bit where you could actually sort of jump up on and swing. So you could swing back and forth on these washing poles, and because there was quite a lot of them, you could kind of race with your pal to see who could do the lot and come back down.
The community, they weren't very much in the days, neither they were. I think the only thing that was that would socialise is maybe through the church, you know, and even that, I mean, the church, there weren't much going on at that time. They were trying to build. I was brought up Catholic, so the church I went to was St Clair's, and we had the sisters of the Daughters of Charity, you know, organisation, and we also had the priests from the Salesians organisation, you know, so and they brought a lot of good to build up St Clair's. In fact, I think St Clair's just got built in the early 60s as well. So it did, you know, so living with St Clair's being built in the early 60s as well, you know, so the priests and the sisters, they would make up, organise like fundraising, and like maybe a kids club, you know, like a wee youth group, and that was where community. So it was, you know, so we didn't have anything that we've got now. Easterhouse was just getting built in the early 60s, you know, so obviously you had like gang fights and all that, like over on the pitches, you know, which at that time we didn't see a lot of it. You know, if they wanted to fight, they went over to the pitches. I mean, you had like the Drummy and Dentoy, you know, and so, but nothing, and they would fight with their hands. They wouldn't fight with any, well, no, that I know, any weapons, what they use now, you know, and then when things started getting built, like maybe the pubs, you know, then obviously where I stay, there used to be a pub called the Casbah, you know, and so that was like the local pub where my mum and dad and my brother and sisters and all that went to, you know, and it was just like walking distance.
What school did you go to?
It was called Blair Tulloch Primary School. It was about 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the 47 Duntarvie Road. It was a kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was, the kind of area it was located was, you had the school itself, so there's various buildings. It had a main kind of, so this is a kind of 60s, late 50s, 60s kind of building. And then it had these wooden, what we called huts, on the other side of it. And there was a janitor's house. And between the school itself and the secondary school, which was Westwood Secondary School, which was about half a mile away, not half a mile, but less than that, further up, there was loads of football pitches. So I don't know what you call that, red. Ash. So these were ash football pitches, and then the secondary school, Westwood Secondary School.
Can you remember when you started school? Yeah, I can remember it as if it was yesterday, because when I started school, we were walking distance from the school. So when we were out at playtime, which I thought it was time to go home, so I went home, and my mum said, "What are you doing here?" You know, and I says, "We've came home, everybody's out." And she went, "No, that's playtime." So with the teachers looking for me, and my mum marched me up to school again, you know, so that I can remember as clear as daylight. So it was so fun.
What was school like?
I loved it. It was always good. I was always a class clown, but you've got that impression
No
already.
kidding.
I liked school. It was always very enjoyable. We were never allowed to miss school. Even if you're not well, we would always go and possibly get sent home. But me being the youngest as well, I was always known to the teachers. Another McGawkey. What one of you like? You like David, you like Graham. I always did good friends and stuff like that, so I enjoyed school. Even secondary school and stuff as well, I always enjoyed it.
Which secondary school did you go to?
Loch End High School, which is now across the road from where I stay. Again, really enjoyable. And a lot of the friends that I had at Bishop Loch and stuff like that went up with me. So it was friends just moved across and stuff like that, and then managed to make some new ones as well.
What were your favourite lessons?
PE. I never really liked maths, but I liked the teachers. French, I never ever liked French, but I really liked the teacher. So I always tried kind of a wee bit harder at kind of stuff like that. Because the teachers were always okay, up for a laugh and stuff like that as well. In modern studies, we had a really strict teacher to begin with, and then a really fun one came in as well. So I was naturally good at modern studies. Don't know how, but I never had to try at that. And the same with PE, I never really had to try, if it'd been arrogant, but everything else I had to try it. But I was getting alright with teachers and stuff like that as well, so that was half the battle.
And I also was my Miss Cohen entered a picture I did of a train, one of the blue trains running through Glasgow at the time. And I used to take this train with my mother back to the old tenement, because one thing I didn't tell you is, in terms of that sort of community environment, my sister and I didn't have any grandparents, so my mother adopted a granny for us, and the granny was Mrs. Adams, who lived in the close that we used to live in. I think she was further down or something. So we would go, my sister and I would go from Easterhouse back to Cumberland Park Place to Granny Adams, she was called, every Saturday afternoon. But so the train and the drawing or the painting I did was the blue train that would take us there. And Miss Cullen entered us into a Glasgow Schools art competition. And surprisingly enough, it came in second place. So I was very chuffed. I can remember it's not really a big thing, but for a kid and for school, it's a big thing. But I can remember we were going from the huts at Blairtomic Primary School to the main building. I think it's probably going for lunch or something. But as we did that, the headmaster was coming out, and he got Miss Colquhoun's attention and said, "Do you have a Billy Ferry in your class?" And she said, "Yeah." "Well, I'm pleased to tell you that Billy has won second place in the Glasgow School Arts competition, blah blah blah." So everyone was kind of cheering and all that kind of stuff. So that was a lovely sort of experience.
A tenement, there were 6 houses in the one building, so there were so many different neighbours, so we all get on really well, so and they had kids, so we all played together, and played football and all that as well, so we sort of had to make our own entertainment, because you didn't have like cinemas or what you have now, in the days, so you basically had to make your own entertainment, which was fine, so we all had fun and it didn't do us any harm, neither it did, so I played football until I was about 13, so that was fun, and if none of the boys slipped past the ball, I would chase after them, so.
Always had good neighbours actually. Direct neighbours anyway, always had good neighbours. Always looked after one another. Proper old school, looked after one another and didn't dare answer them back. Not like nowadays in my opinion, but he never dared answer an adult back. It was a wee swift slap round the ear. And I'm sure you would be accustomed to it as well. There was plenty of grass fields and stuff like that outside, so we're always out playing football or a big game of hide and seek within the scheme type thing. There was a field right out the back as well, so we're always up there, up to no good, chasing the cows and stuff like that, and setting fires that we were never allowed to do. Sorry.
So what kind of games did you play?
Football, so normally football on the road, on the grass, hide and seek, lightning, so it was like kind of chap door runaway. So because it was kind of six in a close, we'd start for the top, and then the top would chap the door first, and then run down to the middle, then chap that door, then run down to the bottom, chap that door, and then we'd all run away and kind of stuff like that. Always up to no good, but people always knew it was us anyway, so I don't know why we ever did it. We never get away with it either, so my dad wasn't very lenient.
Well, one of the things I used to do was during the summertime, so school had finished, you had, I don't know how many weeks you'd have for the school break, but where the flat was is at the end of was near the end, or the perimeter of the estate, and beyond it was a place called, there was Easterhouse village, so the old village, the estate got its name from, and there was a place called Swinton, and beyond, just before all that, you could walk into fields. It was farmland at the time, so you were able to walk along this sort of very narrow one-track road into farmland essentially, and just beyond the farm was a loch, and it's called, I recall it as being called Drumpelia Loch. So my pals and I would used to take this kind of wee journey into the countryside to Drumpelia Loch, and we'd spend most of the day there, I think. And there was a place, I don't know if in terms of names I'm not quite sure, but there was a kind of castle place. I think it was called Gosh or something. And reputedly it was a kind of loony bin, an insane asylum. So we used to be wary of going too near that place because it was pretty scary, and there were crazy people that sort of lived there. But certainly the walk to the loch, spending time there. And also in the fields, I can remember the summer's day and the blue sky and just sort of lying, I don't know whether it's barley or wheat or whatever, but just lying on the grass and flattening it all. We had this kind of flattened bit. Just looking up at the sky and hearing a skylark. High up, you can hardly see it, but you'd hear a skylark sort of just singing away. And it's a very kind of poignant moment for me because it was just such a blissful experience just to lie back with the sun in your skin, the smell of the grass or whatever it was, and you hear the birds, the skylark just, singing away merrily. It's just perfect.
He loved his music as well. We used to have family gatherings, like parties and things like that. So, and my dad was a Mario Lanza fan. He did sing, and so did my mum sing. So they were good singers. We used to have like a sing-song at a party, and if anybody butted in, my dad would used to say, one singer, one song. That was so funny, But in the 60s, we had parties all the time, and then it was safe to have parties, And at New Year, when we had a party, they lasted for a week, because each member of my relatives would take a turn. Right, whose turn? Right, we'll go there the next night, So it would last for a few days. But now you can have a New Year party any time, So, but it was good having family gatherings with all my cousins and all that.
I always remember getting a bike. I remember asking for a bike, and I say we never had it growing up. I remember going in and seeing a bike, and that's always stuck in my head. The bike ended up being an absolute nuisance, to be fair, because the pedal kept falling off, but the initial thing we were getting that bike. But
How old were you?
10, around about 10, 9, 10 I would say.
Was that Christmas?
That was Christmas, yeah. I remember getting a PlayStation as well. I mean, looking back, I probably got it through Crazy Geordies or something like that. But it sounded cliche and cheesy and stuff like that, and I probably get layered off my brothers for saying it, but you had the family anyway, so nothing really else mattered. So we were always quite happy. See if we got a football, we were happy with that. Anything else was a bonus. A football or a can that we could kick about or a bottle. We were, even now I'm dead easy to please. Just a football.
You were the youngest?
I was the youngest, yeah.
So did you get all the hand-me-downs?
Yeah, it was always fun.
Did they always fit?
I think they did, yeah. I don't know if they did fit or they were made to fit.
Just at maybe across the road, it used to be Corpac. They had a wee island there, and we played football on there. But for clubs and all that, they weren't clubs and all that, like a youth group and all that. Everything that we went, like a youth group and all that, it was through the church. It was what the church had organised, and we had the youth group, and we had that on a Sunday, so we played games. At that we had juice, and as I get older, I used to take some of the younger ones and bake, so but they were nothing, it was all through the church, what the church had laid on for the kids to do, but there weren't any football clubs or anything like that you could go to, that this was a lot more years down the line when these things started getting built, and I think they were still building houses round about Easterhouse, and then they built the shopping centre, that started getting built. They built the pubs, the local pubs that's round about, but apart from anything for the children to do, no.
So was there any dancing or anything like that?
Just at the St Benedict's, when there used to be a dance laid on, you know, like once a month, you know, but apart from that, they weren't even the fort that's there now, that wasn't even thought of. If you wanted to go to the pictures, you had to go into the city centre, or anywhere. If you wanted to go to the dancing, you had to go into the city centre, you know. And but for roundabout in Easterhouse, no, there weren't any dance halls or whatever. The only dance night out that we had was in St Benedict's once a month.
Did you have any aspirations as to a future career at that point?
Not really. So I can't recall of spending much time focusing on a career as such. The kind of attitude or the sense I got from teachers was they didn't expect too much from you. So potentially there was apprenticeships, but the idea of going to college or university wasn't really that prevalent. So, and then also at that time, so we're talking about kind of the early 70s or mid 70s. There wasn't much of, and in Easterhouse at the time, there was all sorts of other things going on in terms of kind of deprivation and drugs and gang warfare. So I think that there was a sense of the teachers were there. It was a job, and they had to deal with these kids who were coming from very sort of dysfunctional families and all that kind of thing. So we all got kind of lumped in with this kind of same kind of type of people that didn't really have any ambition or aspirations.
What was the community like when you were growing up?
Growing up, so kind of schemes growing up. Me being the youngest, though, some of my brothers kind of gang fought and stuff like that, so we were kind of restricted to our scheme. So even coming up to the swimming and stuff like that, we had to come up in a kind of group and stuff like that to be kind of safer sort of a thing. It's not so bad now, I don't think, but it was quite bad kind of growing up and stuff like that with the gang fighting and stuff.
How did you feel about that at the time?
I didn't feel anything. I didn't know any different anyway, so it was just the way to live. So it would kind of eased off once I went to secondary school because you then became friends with these people. I was never a huge gang fighter anyway, but it was just part of life. I didn't know any different growing up, so it was just the way you lived.
Did the gang culture prevent you from doing things?
Probably, yeah. So certain buses we couldn't take. My mum and dad split up when we were quite young as well, and she ended up living in one of the kind of rival gangs and stuff, so we had to go at certain times and make sure she was there at the bus stop to meet us and kind of things like that. But again, it was just normal, so it was as if it was unique to us, my family. It was just the way it was. For me, they kind of changed in secondary school, as I touched on there, because you then become friends with people. I was probably too young to realise that a lot of groups were maybe doing things to combat this. Workshops and kind of things like that, gang prevention, but I think secondary school probably changed it, and then a lot of primary schools and stuff all kind of merged into one. So there's not as many primary schools, so I think just by nature people all come from different areas anyway into the same primary school, so it kind of possible in a way that way. But yeah, it's not quite as bad anymore. Some young ones might say differently, but it doesn't seem that bad for me.
Was sectarianism an issue?
I wouldn't say an issue. it was definitely there, but again it was just part of life. Kind of the 70s and 80s were, I think, quite bad with sectarianism. I was born in the 90s, so it was just part of life, and people just accepted it. It was never, sectarianism and derogatory terms were used, but people never really took offence to them. It was just, but they will know this sort of thing, the terminology that was used.
Do you think it is an issue today?
After I left school when I was 16. I had my first job was my brother and my sister. They worked in the Canada, it was called, at Queensley Industrial Estate. So my sister was a machinist, and my brother used to work in the cutting room, you know, to cut all the material. And so I got a job in there. So I was in there just under 2 years, and it closed down. Then I got another job in machining. It was in Collinses in Royston Road, and so I was in there a year and a half, and it went into liquidation. So, and I went, I'm not going back into machining, you know. So Lucy's, that used to be in Argyle Street many years ago, I got a job in there, and it was in the Italian restaurant. They had a Italian restaurant on the 5th floor, and on the 6th floor they had a French restaurant. And so I started in the Italian restaurant, and that's where my chef career started, you know. So I'd been a chef for 40 years, you know, in different restaurants.
I always wanted to be a firefighter. Weird, because I always set fires, which is really strange. I probably should admit that, but yeah, so I'd go in and I'd smell of smoke and stuff like that, and it was never like buildings or anything like that. I like to point out, I never murdered anybody. Just small fire, like bins and stuff like that. No, that makes it alright, but I always wanted to be a firefighter, but never came to anything. A football player, but I think every young boy dreams of that.
Did you take any particular classes towards a career path?
No, until I was probably too old, if that makes sense. I probably made a career choice too late. I don't think, even nowadays, I don't think schools help enough to steer people towards what they're good at. So I say I kind of was quite good at modern studies, so maybe that, and they need to try at it. And I probably chose that just a wee bit too late. But other than that, no, I don't think I really chose anything.
So what did you do after school?
I left and went to sports coaching, tried to do a HND in sports coaching. Well, that never really came anything. I got a job in a post office in the shopping centre, Seven Lochs shopping centre. And then from there just kind of progressed through post office and then different jobs, just kind of where life took me.
And what are you doing now?
I am a community impact officer now for the Easterhouse Sports Centre.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you enjoy what you do?
Love it. It's not something I've ever done before. It's something I always wanted to do, but just never materialised to anything. But it's difficult. Good support and stuff like that as well, but it's good to work within the community and now offer things, as I say, like there wasn't any clubs when I was growing up, so I can now do something about it.
Can you kind of tell me what your job involves then?
So it's trying to see if there's any gaps within the community, whether it will be youth based or adult based or anything kind of as a club, so anything like that I can introduce spaces available to the clubs that need to grow or spaces that clubs need to move forward or develop clubs in itself to impact the community for the better. So walking football is something that I'm now trying to introduce to try and bring forward the mental health, physical health and stuff like that as well for all ages, so it's not just for over 50s. It's any age, any background, anything like that. You can come in, play some walking football. You don't need to be fit, anything like that. So that's one of the very first projects. But it's a very big project in itself, the sports centre, taking it over for Glasgow Life. So it's slow progress, but it's better than no progress.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a couple of courses now. One's a community trust, learning all about what goes on in other communities and what you can give to help the community. So I think that's a 10-week course. And I'm also doing another course, and it's all to do with your writing your autobiography from when you started school until your teenage years. So we're in, I think we're in week 5, so that's a 14-week course. So yeah, it's great. It's great.
Going forward, what would be your aspirations for Easterhouse and Letterlock?
To get away from the stigma of being deprived and stuff like that. Like, I know plenty of people that work. I know plenty of people that work well, that do well for themselves. Have got their own businesses and have grew up here. And some of the biggest supporters of this are people who stay around here as well. So, but there is still a problem there. So probably getting away from that stigma is probably quite big. Like, you've got Glasgow Fort that invest millions. You've got some of the high-end shops that are up in Glasgow Fort, £100 t-shirts and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to put a shop there if it's not going to sell. Probably getting away from that kind of stigma would be quite well, and people being proud of where they're from.
Do you think people are proud of Easterhouse?
Not enough. I don't think they're enough. I think it's, as I say, a very close community. They should be proud of it, but at the same point I don't think there is enough help. Like eyesores, they cost millions that they just plant right in the middle of Easterhouse. Doesn't help the place. So I think a bit of help could come in. They might look to go, we've invested X amount of money into it, but it's went on a complete and utter eyesore.
Can I finish up by asking, what is your favourite memory of Easterhouse?
Probably the memory I mentioned earlier, even though it's very simple, is going along to the Trumpelia Loch, along that country road, and just seeing the kind of the barley or the wheat, and the kind of the way the wind would it'd be like waves, the water, and the sound of the skylarks and the birds and the nature, and the buzzing of bees flying past you, and just lying back and taking all that in. So it's a very simple memory, but it's one that's mostly important in terms of my experience there. All the other stuff, I don't know, maybe I've blocked out a lot of that kind of experience. But certainly and being next to the loch, I've always had an affinity with water, and I think part of that was the experience of going along to Trumpelia Loch. Because you can hear the lapping of the waves on the shore, on the bank, and the sun glistening on the top of the waves and things like that.